That it is great. We're going to talk about Afghanistan today. We were just, as you can see, we were just chatting about it just now. Oh, wow, I just cut myself off. Okay. And going to see what your thoughts are because now we're beginning to see a lot more with respect to Afghanistan. And wonder how all of this is going to work out, right? Okay, so let me do this. Wonder how for going forward. You know, um, it's no longer if the United States versus else. You now have China, which has become an emerging, which has emerged as it's second to us in terms of the economy. But wow, they're making investments long term that could really that are putting them squarely in the future. Look at how they're, which is an opportunity. Um, there's a lot going on there, but we're going to have Medea Benjamin, of course, from the of Code Pink, one of the world's leading peace activists, who's been fighting to get us out of Afghanistan for years. We're going to have John Nichols from The Nation magazine, of course, and we're going to have Alexander, Washington editor for Harper's. He's going to talk to us about all of the money that people have earned, or that they have been able to military industrial complex. Boy, oh boy, they've made a whole lot of money. And so we're going to hear about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. I want to get your thoughts on all of this. And we see that we've not been told the truth about a lot of things, So we need to talk about that. And ultimately, guess what? The people who are from there ended up getting back anyway. How about that? They got their land back. That is for them. Hey, Lorraine, sweet Lorraine, how you doing? Andre, Linda, Linear Bob.
Automate your processes with NetSuite.
30 seconds.
Your books in no time. 93% of service businesses increase their visibility and control since graduating to NetSuite. Special Finance is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to graduate.
Head to netsuite.com/radar now. netsuite.com/radar. netsuite.com/radar.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
You can change the world, change the world, change the world. You can change the world, change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Call me, text 773-763-9273, 733-763 WCPT. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, live coming to you from AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's a joy to be with you today, Voice of Progressive Minnesota. We've got to talk about Afghanistan today. Let's break it down. We have been riveted by the picture of the Afghan people, people who helped America's efforts in the occupation of Afghanistan, because that's indeed what it was. And they're trying to get to the United States. They're certainly trying to get out of there. We're going to talk about the money that the military industrial complex made off of this occupation. And that's really what fed this. And Alexander Coburn, who is a brilliant analyst, he's the Washington editor for Harper's, is going to talk to us. Andrew Coburn, he's going to be with us today to talk about the money that has been made. Medea Benjamin, you all know her from Code Pink at Exchange. She's going to talk to us about Afghanistan. But I want to hear from you too. And if there are military families out there who have lost someone in Afghanistan, who living or who are living with someone who sustained an injury that reshaped the lives of your family, I want you to call me. Certainly, you are in our prayers. I know you're trying to figure out a lot of things today. Those things down. Um, so I want to hear from you. I want you to call me at 773-763-9267. CPT, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text. And I want to say hello to you, Shirley from Philadelphia, and Francis from the Gambia, Robert and Linear Bob. That's right, from out there. The Carib Queen 63. How you doing, Lorraine? Sweet Lorraine, keeping everybody straight. Louie Chewy and Linda and my brother Andre, sending you all much love. And you know what? Linear and Bob said that for some weird reason, YouTube says this program starts at 10 minutes. I'm getting a lot of complaints, or should I say, a lot of comments from all of you about not being able to find the show, or it doesn't start when it says it's supposed to start. Do me a favor, please like and share, everybody. Like and share, and let as many people as you can know about the show, because you know a lot of things are going on out there in the cyber world. I'll just leave it right there. So what do? You have to find your way around it and just spread the word. Like and share, everybody. Please just take a moment to like and share the show. Everybody who's listening, everyone who's watching, and if you want the rest of the show, please go to WCPTA20.com /Santita. WCPTA20.com /Santita. Of course, we'll be talking about these booster shots with Dr. Deborah Holden in just a few minutes. But talking about Afghanistan today, trying to break it all down and understand what we are looking at, everybody. So let's get to a few of these headlines. In Chicago, it's going to be a really beautiful day today, partly cloudy, 80 degrees. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 91 degrees. Whew. The Dow closed up 110 points. The NASDAQ closed down 29 points. The S&P 500 closed up 11, but they're setting records. Main Street struggling, but Wall Street is doing gangbusters. Oh boy. The Twins were triumphant over Cleveland 5-4, and the White Sox are triumphant over the Oakland A's 5-2. But wow, the Cubs, they're really struggling right now. Cincinnati 14, the Cubs 5. Ow. Did anyone see President Biden's speech yesterday? That's right. It turns out he had a talk with the nation about Afghanistan. He says that the buck stops with him, according to this report. But his first comment since the Taliban retook Afghanistan, Kabul, really, when we started in this enterprise, they controlled 5% of the country. Now they control more than 50%, everybody. So he shared the blame with 4 different presidents, but he has repeatedly said that it was his call to be the final commander-in-chief to oversee troops in Afghanistan. Of course, we saw President Trump try to begin he has actually continued a Trump policy to get us out of Afghanistan. So what do you think about that, everybody? He remains defiant in his decision. He said, quote, "After 20 years, I've learned the hard way. There was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces." And he conceded that the Taliban's advance did unfold quickly. We're going to talk about that day. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about the Taliban's advance? I mean, they have overtaken more than 50% of the country. Wow, wildfires and droughts are still relentlessly ravaging the United States. Dry wildfire conditions are expected to continue through the month, and we're seeing Lake Mead out west. They are experiencing a water crisis, and how is that going to shape how people live out west? We're going to be talking about that because they are going to have to, they're facing water shortages. What does that mean? Will they be able to use water all day, every day? We don't know. So did you see the pictures of the Afghan helpers, the people who helped the United States in their efforts over the past 20 years as they were clinging to planes? There were some people who actually fell off the planes as they were in the sky. It was just horrifying to see, sending them. Oh my goodness, the people, much love. They're waiting to get their papers processed because they believe that they're no longer safe in the country. What do you think, everybody? What do you think? What do you think? The UN is saying that we need immediate action to protect the human rights of these persons who helped the United States in this project. What do you think? What do you think? It takes a long time to process these papers. Should they be just expedited? Should they just be put on planes and brought to the United States? What do you think? This is feeling like the fall of Saigon. I don't know. What do you think? In the meantime, other things are happening in the United States. President Biden has instituted permanent SNAP boosts. That is, this will transform lives, say anti-poverty advocates. This is the money that will help families. The USDA's record 27% an increase in food stamp benefits is a large advance for anti-poverty programs, everybody. What do you think about that? That's good work. J&J exports tens of millions of vaccine doses from Africa to the EU. What do you think about that? The US-based pharmaceutical giant J&J has recently exported tens of millions of coronavirus vaccine doses from South Africa to rich European Union countries under an unusual contract. Wow. What do you think about that, everybody? Many people think that this is just disgusting, as African countries have fallen way behind in terms of getting. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? 3.7 million more people would have quit their jobs by now had it not been for the pandemic. Did you know that? If the pandemic never hit, 3.7 million people would have quit their jobs by now. It seems that people were getting very, very restless. That is according to Daniel Zhao, who is a senior economist at Glassdoor. He looked at what the quits, they're calling it, were trending like in 2019. And it turns out, had it not been for the pandemic, people would have quit these jobs anyway. Can you believe it? Wow. Seems that people are very, very restless. Well, let me give you some good news today. Some of my people have vacation. I said, well, let me just give you just a little opportunity, something to you that might help you on your way. And this is really about understanding your value, understanding your worth, no matter what you've been through. My great-grandmother Tibby used to say that it doesn't matter what happens to you, as long as it doesn't happen in you, you're okay. Well, it turns out there was a well-respected speaker who began a seminar by showing an audience of about 150 people a crisp $20 bill. He asked the audience, who wants this $20 bill? All 150 people raised, we want that money. He said, well, I want this money to some, but first, he crumpled up the bill. And then he asked the crowd again, would you like that? And all 150 hands went in the air. And so then he said, okay, and then he stomped all over it and ground his foot into it and made the money really, really dirty. And then he raised it into the air once again. The money was filthy. He said, does anyone want it now? All hands went up again. We want that money. And the speaker said, there's a lesson here for you. Because no matter what I do to this money, no matter what I do to it, you still want it because it has retained its value. It's still worth $20. And of course, you're worth much more than $20, everybody. Life beats us up, life stomps on us, it spits on us, and it does even worse. But you never lose your value. You never lose your value. In fact, you're still great no matter what happens to you. So remember that. No matter what happens to you, you're still great. You still have value. No matter what happens to you, as long as it doesn't happen in you, you're going to be all right. And even if it happens in you, work it out. Work it out. But you never lose your value no matter what happens to you. Always remember that. No matter what you look like, no matter what you've been through, you still have the value that God put into you when you first got here. You never lose your value. Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, brilliant, world-renowned epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. We're hearing a lot about boosters today, and it seems that we left the conversation yesterday on boosters, but our segment is a little abbreviated today because we're talking about Afghanistan and all that's going on over there. But you know what? You've got 10 minutes. Talk to us about these boosters.
All right. Well, what I want to do first of all is I want us to not call them boosters.
Mm.
Here's what I want us to call them. I want us to call them the third shot.
Mm.
I want it to be called the third shot. And I realize for some people, if you got the J&J vaccine, this will be your second shot. A booster has given people the false sense that they can just wait around and get a booster. They can just wait until the booster comes out and that they'll be fine. And I don't want people to have that false sense of security or that wrong impression. The booster is designed because we know that this immunity from this vaccine, just like with every vaccine, will eventually wane. How long, how fast, exactly in what time frame, we're figuring that out. The good news is that there are people who participate in the clinical trials who we are understanding that with. Those people were the first people to get vaccinated. And for many of them, some of them got vaccinated right at the beginning of the trial. So we now know what immunity and protection from the vaccine looks like 1 year, 14 months, 16 months after people have been vaccinated. We're learning a lot from the folks that participate in the clinical trial. So I want people to talk about the booster as their third shot. And you all just give me a little poetic license if you got the J&J and you only got one, because then it truly would just be your second shot. So let's call it the third shot. It is going to be needed. And I was pretty confident right from the beginning that this was going to become something that would be almost seasonal, like a flu vaccine. Why? Because we're going to see ebbs and flows in the variants. We're going to see ebbs and flows in cases and spreading the same way we do with flu. So people should just get prepared. Everybody eventually is going to have to get this vaccine. And then we're going to have to get the booster shots. Right now, I want you to call it your third shot. But we're going to need booster shots to keep giving us that ongoing added protection as our own immunity wanes from the vaccine, and as season by season and annually variants of this virus emerge.
But Dr. Deb, you've put it very differently, and you framed it in a way, quite frankly, you don't hear people on television, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Walensky, you don't hear them frame it as you just framed it. You said, well, at the beginning of the trial, they don't call it a trial.
Yeah.
And because this was presented as the answer, which the head of Merck said, we're making a mistake by selling it this way. You said this is a trial. It helps you to see it differently, right? Because, and I think that we need to broaden the discussion, which is what you've been doing, and you've been very honest. Because the most vaccinated country on earth, one of them is Israel. More than 80% of the population has been vaccinated. And most of the people, the overwhelming people who are in the hospital with COVID are the vaccinated people. But when you put it this way, when you say that this is a trial and we've been trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, how long this works, and all of that, it changes it's a game changer. It changes your perspective. And you're saying it's not a booster. It's not a booster. So let me ask you this. What about the people who got the single dose J&J shots? Is it safe to get, do you get a booster from Pfizer, Moderna, or the relabeled AstraZeneca? Does it matter where you get this third shot or second shot from?
We're figuring that out. And we can somewhat of the third shot right now because the J&J vaccine was late to the party. So the people who got the J&J vaccine aren't quite up yet for this follow-up shot, if you will. But we're figuring it out. I've been asking the exact same question. Am I now brand?
Yeah. Brand wedded, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Am I now stuck with the Pfizer?
Okay.
It looks like, and this is like sort of like hot off the press provisional. It looks like you won't necessarily be brand wedded, but there may be some value in type vaccine. So I got the mRNA vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like I will be able to get either one of the mRNA vaccines. Remember, the AstraZeneca, the J&J, these are different types of vaccines. They're built on a different technology. They do different things. They protect you in a different way. So I think the short version is we're going to figure that out. Because what we do know, I've been telling people, take the reins of your health. What a lot of people have done is they just went on ahead and got they made their own blues, basically. They just went out, went in, walked, pretended as if they hadn't been vaccinated, and got them a third dose. There's a whole lot of now known cases of people who got the one dose J&J and said, "Oh, this thing don't seem to have enough protection against these variants," and then they went somewhere else and started all over with the Moderna or the Pfizer. So we do have a lot of people who just out in the community. Again, none of this is really being tracked very well. So we've got people who've already had more than their, full doses. And then we've got a bunch of people who aren't vaccinated at all and are now going to places where they're required. I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
I would not do it. I would not do it. And don't get me wrong, science is not perfect. But what would be the whole point? I'm not injecting anything into my body without having some sense and some understanding of what it is, how it's been tested, what the results are. You remember, initially when I got vaccinated, this is when we were in this supply-demand shortage. Mm-hmm. We had less supply than we did then. And I had a very hard time. They canceled my appointment for my second dose. And it took a while. It came right at the wire when I got that appointment for that second dose. And I was livid. I said, I did not do this. When I weighed out the risk and the benefit was from the 2 doses. I wouldn't have done it for 50% protection. I would have said, I'll just keep protecting myself if that's all I'm going to get. And wait a little bit longer because I know it's going to happen. As we learn more about it, developing and issuing more shots. And if the shots are going to get better, if anything, the more we do it, the better we're going to get at it. I said I would have waited had I known that I was only going to get one shot. I was mad. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. But if I had heard, if they had you explaining this, you'd have far less. Well, okay. I just read the New York Times article that 25 in New York have gotten these shots, and I'm going to send an article to you because it really is very compelling. I could, when they talk about people who've been not just hesitant, who've just said no for a whole lot of reasons. The way this has been explained, first of all, you have hewed to the fact, stayed with the fact that this is a trial, a clinical. Mm-hmm. I've gone back and forth with, even with my father about it. I was like, Dad, it is a clinical trial. I said, Dad, hey, wait. Yes, it is. That's what it is. So even explaining that and saying that, hey, we find ourselves in this pandemic and we're trying to find things that work, that is your approach is much more reassuring, Dr. Holden. It just is. And it's much more honest. And the fact that you've been forthright about, because you said, hey, when they were saying that, and the Moderna, you were like, whoa, or you can wait 21 days. No, you can wait 28 days. No, you can wait 6 weeks. You were like, I sign up for that. So, the last minute, what do you want people to do? And hey, Eric Burrows from Los Angeles and everybody else. What do you want people to do?
Yeah, somebody said this to me and I thought it was really great. Because I told you I got into trouble because I jumped out in front of the CDC on this recommendation around schools and that school children be everybody, K through 12, and everybody in the building be met when the kids go back. And people said, the CDC hasn't suggested that, and blah, blah, I got the same. She is an MD and PhD, and I have a PhD in public health. The degree that qualifies her to do this work is her public health. I have a PhD in public health. I've got 22 years of experience. I'm honored to be a source of trusted and credible information, and I'm happy to grapple with people. I think people should grapple and challenge what they're being told and get all their questions answered. But by all means, don't sit on the fence and don't stand in ignorance.
Okay.
Do your own research, grapple with the experts, and make decisions based on what you know and what makes sense for you. I accept and respect that not everybody is.
15 seconds.
But I'm good as long as they're a well-informed no and not a don't know, don't care, or have bad information no. So thanks for having me. I will continue to come every day and give people to the best of my ability the knowledge that I have. I'm happy to be on this journey with everybody.
Well, you're part of the family here on the Santita Jackson Show. What do you mean you're glad? You better be.
Yeah.
It's almost a grandma. We're on the India watch. Stay right here, everybody. But dear Benjamin, we're talking about Afghanistan on the Santita Jackson Show. Love you, Dr. Deborah Holden. Is this my Gene Williams from my back there in China?
This is WCPT.
Let me know if that's Eugene. Oh, bless your heart if it is. But even if it isn't, that's all good.
Are you happy with your job, or you like to get up early every morning and head into work?
Thank you. So you know, this story was evolving.
Yeah, sure.
And so I had to move around. And so I just want to thank you for being today, because it's honey, it's always something, right? But
No problem.
Okay.
I'm excited in days too.
Oh, you know we're waiting. That which means honey, it's not even 7. We just gonna see. Girl, I did the phone because I was helping my daughter to push. I got you. So excited for you. This is just one midst of all of this. This is just a wonderful thing. It's just a blessing.
Benjamin's on the line.
Oh, okay. I want you to meet Medea Benjamin before you go, Dr. Deborah Holden. This is one of our great freedom fighters, my sheroes. Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink. And I can't believe she's not in jail today. That's where she stays. Getting arrested for peace and freedom and liberty everywhere. And this is Dr. Deborah Holden, Medea Benjamin. And Dr. Deborah Holden, a biologist. She came out of Johns Hopkins with her PhD, 24, full scholarship. And she comes on the show every day helping us to wend our way through this pandemic. And we're so grateful for her. She's Health at Michigan State University. She's their associate dean. So consider yourselves introduced, ladies.
Wonderful. What an honor. So great to be with you.
Oh, well, she's about to leave, but do you want to listen, Dr. Deb?
Yes, sir. I'm just gonna hang out and listen if that's okay.
Okay, girl, please. You know you do that all the time. You know this is your. May I go into the refrigerator, please? Of course. I'm like, what is this? Of course you can. But continue to change, Medea Benjamin, every day. Just not every day, every moment. And it's a lot. This is a lot. But I'm so glad that you help us to make sense of it all.
Great to be on with you. Happy to talk about it.
Please help us to understand this, because I think that many of us don't. We're not. Well, I feel like we're being misdirected once again. And spending time out of the United States, you get a chance to see that people have different. They perceive this differently. I really am anxious for you to break it down for people. for them to help them to understand this was an occupation. And so,
Well,
okay,
we gotta start out by saying we should never have gone in.
well, you,
Afghanistan wasn't the center for 9/11. 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. We should have gone after them as individuals, not invaded a whole country. So that we got to keep in the front of our minds. We shouldn't have been in there. So is there ever a good time to leave? Well, there's never a good time to leave, but we should have done it many, many years ago. I don't think the way that
5 seconds.
Biden has done it is good. I think it was a very botched.
hold on. Yeah.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Jackson Show. Coast May, please turn my mic all the way down. We're hearing people saying that there's a lot of clicking. So bring me down, 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 down. Bring me down, bring me down. And let me know, everybody, if that's sounding any better. Just bring me down a little bit more because I'm a little hot in my ear. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT 820, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and, of course, on Facebook, on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, on the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe. Everybody, please, and Coast May, please turn the sound down. It's still a little hot. Still a little
You're
hot.
kind of quiet on your end.
Oh, okay, so very good. Well, I'm just trying to go with what they're saying over here on Facebook. And so let me know, everybody, let me know how the sound is. But, we're talking with Medea Benjamin. Indeed, she is one of my heroes, certainly one of yours, co-founder of Code Pink, and really one of the world's great peace advocates. She peace. She fights for freedom, and she fights to get the story straight. And as we were talking during the break, and as I spoke with her yesterday, she said, there's some things we need to reset the table so that we can know what we're looking at, so that we can understand what this project, what this Afghanistan project was about, as we think about our servicemen and women who've been over there, people who've lost their lives, people who've sustained life-altering injuries for themselves and their families. There's a lot that's going on, and not to mention the Afghanistan and their people. And their people, what was it like for them to be occupied, Medea Benjamin? I mean, should we have been there in the first place? What were we doing over there?
So that's the important thing to keep in the front of our minds, that we should have never been in there in the first place, that this wasn't the center of 9/11, Saudi Arabia was, and that we should have gone after the individuals who attacked us, not invade entire nations like Afghanistan. So we had one congressperson, remember, Congresswoman Barbara Lee,
Yes.
who said no to this, and the rest of the Congress was all taken in by, frankly, the idea of revenge for 9/11. So once we got in there, the quote mission kept changing, and at some point it became to build a nation like a Western nation, which is so unlike Afghanistan, which is a tribal country, a country that's run by many different, it has been run by many different warlords that are not going to come together in a central government. And we propped up a puppet government by pouring billions and billions of dollars in, and the corruption spreads from the top down. And we supposedly trained and equipped a 300,000 person army that never was 300,000. A lot of people just collected a salary, never showed up, and they had nothing to fight for. They were only fighting for paychecks, and you don't fight very hard for a paycheck. In the meantime, you had the Taliban that were fighting for what they believed in, and part of what they believed in was our country should not be occupied by foreigners. In fact, they vowed to keep fighting until the foreigners left. So we should have gotten out a long time ago, but I think we should say that the way Biden is getting us out has been a disaster. Terrible planning, no plan A, B, C, take the troops out, then bring them in, the chaos at the airport, the lack of any agreement between the Taliban and the national government before we left. It was all a disaster. But the idea of leaving was the right idea. It was just executed very poorly.
Well, when we look at how everyone, should I say our media in the United States are saying, oh my goodness, uh, fall so quickly into the hands of the Taliban. But just last week, you and Nicholas Davies wrote a wonderful essay that I saw in Common Dreams, in which you were calling to end the bombings over in these Afghan cities. But you noted that there were 9 provincial capitals that had fallen into Taliban hands in 6 days. It seems like everything was already collapsing, Medea Benjamin.
Well, that's true. It was all crumbling, and the Taliban have been governing in the rural areas for quite a long time now. It's just the cities that have now fallen. And so it was clear once the U.S. said it was leaving that the Afghan military said it had nothing to fight for because it was protected by U.S. bombings. And as we say in that article, the U.S. bombings killed a lot of civilians. So if you look at what the U.S., quote, accomplished after 20 years, it was killing lots of innocent people. It was destroying lots of homes. It was displacing millions of people. There is nothing we can be proud of about what we did in 20 years, except perhaps giving girls more access to education. But, that is only in the cities as well. In the rural areas, the girls either did not have access to education, oftentimes because their very conservative fathers wouldn't let them go, but also because they were too poor, and so they would drop out of school after 1 or 2 years. Afghanistan remains an extremely poor country, one of the poorest in the world, after having been occupied by the rich United States, who poured billions and billions, in fact trillions, into war and left the country in worse shape than when we arrived.
How did the wealthiest country on earth, Afghanistan, as one of the poorest countries on earth, where did the money go?
Well, it was a poor country to begin with, and the money went in huge amounts to the corrupt people at the top who went and built themselves mansions in Dubai and other places and have their safe havens, and most of them ensconced now in those places, like Ashraf Ghani, the president, who left precipitously to one of probably many homes abroad. It was just tremendous corruption. And I also want to say, while we talk about the corruption of the Afghans, we have to remember who got the most money from this. And it's U.S. Weapons manufacturers, it's U.S. Pentagon contractors. They're the ones that really made out like bandits. And so when we look at the CEOs of these companies like Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, and we think of them as great private companies, well, most of their money comes from us, the public, and it went into this war machinery that just fueled this tremendous cycle of violence and misery. So there's corruption all around. And I do want to say that there was a inspector general that every year came out with reports talking about this corruption, and nothing was done about it. And so my question, Santita, is really about where is the accountability on all levels for the corruption, for the lies told by all of these generals who said that victory was just around the corner and told us that for 20 years, and by the, quote, military intelligence that couldn't even predict that Kabul was going to fall 2 days after the Pentagon spokesman said that there was no imminent threat to Kabul. So I want to know, where is the accountability?
And they look genuinely shocked. Like, what kind of intelligence did you have on the ground? And I don't understand.
Well, they look like idiots. Look at Biden, how he just recently said that we have a trained and equipped with the finest equipment, an army of 300,000 against Taliban of 75,000, how strong they are. And then, look at how he looked just a few weeks later when the army basically disappears, doesn't even put up a fight. I mean, I'm glad about that in the sense that it is quite amazing that Kabul has been taken without firing a shot.
Yeah.
Quite remarkable.
That's right. That's right. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Let's talk about this today with the iconic Medea Benjamin of Code Pink. Laura from Atlanta. Laura, what's on your mind?
Hey, Miss Santita.
Hey, Miss Laura from Atlanta.
Yes, this is me. I just called to let you know that you guys have excellent insight on everything. And it's good that we have this kind of insight because there's a lot of people who don't even know about the situation that's going on. There's also a lot of people who don't even listen to the news on this. And can you hear me pretty well?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I already know about the situation in Taliban and everything, and I'm hearing a lot about what's been going on over there and the emergency evacuation that our guys are pulling out, plus the people who have connections with America, they're also pulling out. What is going on over there?
I mean, Medea Benjamin, because we're hearing now, our embassy is closed, but China is open for business. Russia is open for business. But, we forget that they're on one contiguous piece of land. Europe is not just Europe. Europe is Eurasia. Europe bleeds into India, into Russia. Many Russians are ethnically Chinese, which bleeds into China, and on and on and on and on. They're really on one piece of land. Medea Benjamin, could you speak to Laura's concerns or questions?
Well, yes, I think it's actually a big mistake for us to close the embassy. I think it's good to get the majority of people out of there, but to keep a group there and to keep protective forces there with the idea of keeping the embassy open. Certainly we need to be providing lots and lots of visas that should have been done months ago for the people who need to get out of there because they work with the U.S. military. This negotiating with the Taliban started under Trump. And in fact, there was an agreement that the U.S. would be out of there by May 1st. Then Biden came in, said, well, we can't do May 1st, we'll do it by September. In the meantime, they have this long, complicated process for people to get their visas to leave. And that is really leaving so many of these people fearing for their lives, the chaos at the airport. That's why I said the way they have done it has been so botched, so chaotic. In some ways, it represents the 20 years that we have been there and how much we botched things during that whole time. But it is, I think we have a responsibility to those people who did work with us, whether it was as interpreters or working in some of the NGOs that fear for their lives. They should be able to leave. But I must say that so far, the Taliban has said that there is an amnesty for everybody and that they should stay in their places and they should keep looking. They've said to the mayor of Kabul that he should continue to be the mayor. Now, this calm might not last for all that long. Who knows how it will evolve. But it is a good thing that in the meantime, they've told people to continue with their jobs. And I do think that at some point, the United States has to consider the opening of that embassy if things remain calm in Kabul.
Everybody call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Want to hear your thoughts today. What do you think? Ted, call us back. Want to know what you're thinking about Afghanistan. What do you think about all of the money, Medea Benjamin, that went into Afghanistan? The people who lost their lives. I mean, our troops, but the Afghani people. I mean, they lost their lives. Not two, they lost their lives. And I mean,
Well, that's right.
please explain. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think we pay attention to that enough?
No, and I think we should be angry as heck. We should be saying, what the heck was that all about? How did we get into it? How did we let it go on for 20 years? How did we let $2 trillion, I don't think $2 trillion means much to folks, but it does. It could wipe out all of student debt. It could go a long way in providing us with Medicare for all. It could build housing for everybody who needs homes in the United States. It could feed the entire population. I mean, there are so many things we could have done with that money that we should have done with that money. And instead, it left this legacy of death, pain, destruction, and anger, because there were many people who never wanted the United States there. In fact, the ones who joined the Taliban. And then there were people who welcomed the United States and now are extremely angry with us leaving. So, yes, I think it's important to be demanding some kind of answers. And I also want to say, Santita, that you remember after Vietnam, there was something called the Vietnam Syndrome, which was people not wanting the U.S. to get involved in military adventures overseas. And that lasted for quite a while and stopped us from invading other countries. Well, I think now we need something similar where the public says no.
Well, how long did that last? The Vietnam Syndrome.
Well, it actually lasts for a couple of decades. It was really only after 9/11 attack. I mean, we were involved in the Gulf War, but it was after the 9/11 attack that the attitude of the American people changed, and they were very much wanting to get revenge for what happened after 9/11 and started supporting not only the invasion of Afghanistan that was only marginally involved in 9/11, but also the invasion of Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11. So I think we have to go back to, we see in poll after poll, the American people don't support the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, but we have to make sure that that translates into cutting the Pentagon budget. Why isn't this the time for us to now have a peace dividend and to say that the $750 billion that we spend on the Pentagon, that a big chunk of that money, I would say half of that money, should go for the incredible needs we have in this country and for helping the Afghan people with humanitarian aid. But it shouldn't keep going to the Pentagon.
Do you think we owe the Afghan people anything?
Oh, we owe them a lot. There's now millions of people who are displaced. We have to be the biggest donors to humanitarian aid, and we should do that through the United Nations. We owe the women of Afghanistan. If the Taliban indeed say that women can continue to go to school, we should be putting money into education in Afghanistan. I think we certainly owe the people who fear for their lives to get the visas they need to come to the United States and then help them resettle here. So we have a lot of debt to the Afghan people.
We're talking with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink about Afghanistan. What do you think about it, everybody? Do you think that we owe Afghanistan reparations, if you will? What were we doing there in the first place? Does anybody know? Does anyone know? That is something that I asked several people, Medea Benjamin. Do you know why we were there? And there's silence. And then, no, I don't know why we were there. But everyone, the people I know say, I bet you there was some oil there. I bet you there was some diamonds, some gold, something. And they are indeed a mineral-rich nation. Do we have U.S. corporate involvement in Afghanistan? I mean, who was winning here? Because, the military-industrial complex, they won, and so did the Taliban. Okay.
Absolutely. They're the ones who won. I mean, it was too dangerous for U.S. companies to get involved in long-term development projects, but certainly it is the weapons industry that made tremendous profits from this war. And let's also remember that it's a lot easier to get into a war than it is to get out of it, because the kind of chaos we see now will be part of the legacy of President Biden and his administration. And who wants to have to deal with that? It's easier to just keep going along with the status quo, which is now 20 years of muddling along with U.S. troops there and the American people not paying any attention to it. It actually took a lot of courage on the part of Biden to say, no, I don't want to keep doing this. I want to bring those troops home.
Everybody, what do you think about this? And where do we go from here? I mean, some people have said that this, the way this broke down on the United States, the way really Afghanistan fell into Taliban hands on our watch. Has that altered how America is viewed in terms of its power, its military power, its diplomatic power, its power as a superpower in the world? I mean, because now you see China and Russia getting in place. I'm not objecting to it because everybody has a right to the tree of life, but has this forever changed the American project, or certainly how we're perceived overseas?
Absolutely. I think this is shows the world that America is a paper tiger, that we weren't able to win against a very ill-equipped, badly organized group of 75,000 ragged soldiers who mostly were fighting on foot against all of the equipment that the United States had. And that after 20 years, we go with our tail between our legs. It says a lot to the rest of the world. I think we are, unfortunately, a declining country because we put so much of our money into the military, and China doesn't. And we see them now going in, and they will have these projects for large infrastructure projects to get the mineral resources. China will benefit from the U.S. having left Afghanistan without firing a shot. And I think if we look at China around the world, we see a similar pattern, that they don't go with their military, they go with development projects, some good, some bad. But in any case, it's much more welcome by countries around the world than the U.S. military approach. So I hope, Santita, that one of the consequences of this is not, well, we should have stayed longer, we shouldn't have left, but it's just the opposite. It's okay, and what are we doing now? Why do we still have troops in Iraq and Syria? And why did we, let's not let our military now pivot to Asia and say that, okay, we're done with the Afghanistan debacle and the Middle East. Now let's focus our attention on what they're calling the real threat of China, which would be a disastrous consequence of this utter failure in Afghanistan.
We're talking with Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, about Afghanistan. What do you think about what's happening? We're going to be talking with John Nichols at the top of the hour, and Andrew Coburn, the Washington editor for Harper's, about what we're seeing there. People are shocked that the Taliban has essentially overtaken not the country, but their country. But dear Benjamin, I think that we need to change how we see things, or maybe we need to see things from someone else's perspective. I might not agree with someone's government, but it's their government to choose, and it's their country to do with it, whatever it is that they wish to do with it. Certainly, we want human rights to be preserved. But where do we go from here? How should we be looking at this? The last 90 seconds belong to you.
I think just like the case of Vietnam, where we lost there after so many 50,000 American deaths, and the American people said, let's not invade other countries. We have to have that same kind of public aversion to U.S. militarism now, to say, let's fix our own country. Let's invest those billions and trillions of dollars into fixing all the problems we have here at home, and not go seeking out military adventures in other countries. And if that's the result, that will be the only silver lining that we will see from these 20 years of horrific destruction and death and utter colossal failure. So let's hope that that's the direction that we go in. We give Biden support for having left. Yes, we criticize the way we do it, but more importantly, we say, let's cut the military budget, and I would say let's cut it in half, invest that money in the U.S., and make sure our military is here to defend us at home, not to seek conflicts overseas.
Medea Benjamin, freedom fighter, Code Pink, sending you much love, my dear Shiro and friend. John Nichols at the top of the hour on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, I just love you, Medea Benjamin. John Nichols, as we talk about Afghanistan, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? I want to hear from you. 773-763-9278. You can text me. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers, for that opportunity. On the Santita Jackson Show, back in just a minute on WCPT and AM 950 Radio. Is Medea Benjamin still there?
Yes.
Medea, thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely to be on with you. Please call anytime.
Oh, look, you're going to hear from me again because there's a lot of work, I think, to do to really because I think that we also need. I'd like to have a discussion with you about where the military budget ought to be going, right? I mean, what do we if they are not engaged in war? What do we train these young men and women to do? I mean, there's a lot. I mean, because to me, it would be a great jobs training program. They can get great skills there. We just have to do it.
The Climate Corps,
Yeah, I do.
Dealing with the climate crisis would be great. Building affordable houses would be great.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be done.
There's a lot to be done.
Your next guests sound fantastic.
Well, I told you I needed you to start things off for me today, so I've got a show. You started everything off, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. Much love to you. Have a great day.
Oh, much love, many blessings. My beloved Medea Benjamin, everybody. She has done so much great work for so long. Don't ever take for granted that we have a great woman, a great hero in our midst in Medea Benjamin, everybody. Sending her much, much, much love. Everybody.
Hey, Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
We have Renee on hold right now.
Oh,
she
okay.
just wants to come into the next hour for the Afghanistan discussion.
I want her to do it. Fantastic.
Then,
I can't wait to hear what she's got to say. And I don't think she's going to hang up.
No, I'm sure Renee's going to stick it out. And then, Ted said that I let Ted know what was going on, so Ted's going to be calling back in this hour, and
Okay.
getting Ted back on too.
I'm going to bring him right back. Tell him I'm going to bring him right on.
But, as soon as he calls in, I'll let him know that we'll be going to him right away as soon as he calls in. So he should be calling in around like the beginning, middle of the hour.
Well, you're working with him, and I thank you. I thank you so much for that.
No, it's all good.
Oh.
Again, yeah, maybe I know Ted. He's pretty passionate about his topic, so just maybe be a little careful. He's not like super heated up, but like he's
gets wound
passionate.
up.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little passion's good. So.
And sometimes it can be, it can, a spark can become a flame or a raging fire, and I get it. Because people, feel. We've been locked away for a year and a half. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. There's so much that is going on, and it's very unsettling. And then you see these people who are running all over the tarmac in Kabul. What happened? Well,
just the video. It's messed up. I hate seeing it. It's so sad.
Well, you know what? The thing is, I've never been there in the first place. It's their country. It's their country. And can you imagine if we had another country sitting on top of us? Americans cannot even imagine that.
We would be going absolutely crazy in this country. We would be kicking and screaming.
Yeah. People know what else to do. And then you always have some people who are going to fight. Whatever you say about the Taliban, they're those people, as far as we know.
Yeah.
And people want to be free. People want to be free, and I would expect these people to lead the country, if you will, or certainly to be the heads of state, if you will, who do not help their countrymen and women. They don't do anything. You know, you go over to Europe and you bump into these people in Europe. They're in Switzerland. They're in Dubai. I mean, they're all over the world with the most fabulous places, and their children are not in school over there. They have no emotional investment in the country.
Yeah.
None. And it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's just a bad situation right now.
Well, you know, and it's our fault, and we need to stop it. We fought a colonial power. We did that.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks to say, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're 100% in the wrong here, and frankly, a majority of the blame, I think, does fall on us.
Of course it does. It does.
I saw it perfectly. I was on the internet over the weekend, like when all this was starting to come out. I was on like Reddit, and like I saw like one of the top comments. It was like, you know, just after 9/11, it was pretty much just the U.S. They said the U.S. wanted to body someone, and I'm not sure if you're aware with like the saying, but like pretty much they're just saying that the U.S. wanted to just fight someone after 9/11. Like they were just making those decisions purely based off like emotions and how they felt, and it's just like it hasn't done us well in these like 20 years since.
Well, I mean, as if there was not more to that. Also, I mean, they need to stop that. They need to stop. They really, they need to quit. They really.
We have about 35 seconds.
Thank you.
Actually, no, sorry, about a minute. 30.
Okay. Do we have John Nichols on?
I'm gonna get him up right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You and I've just been chatting away, but I enjoy speaking with you.
You can't turn it down.
I
I'm gonna get him up right now.
Okay, thank you. Hey everybody. Hey, Miss Jones from Minnesota. Where are you from? Where are you from in Minnesota? Are you in Minneapolis, St. Paul? John Nichols, how are you, my dear brother beloved?
I am very well, my sister. How are you?
I am doing well. You know what I'm going to do? This young woman, Renee, has called in. She's a faithful caller. I'm going to let her ask her question. I want to respond to her, and then just know it at 28 after the hour we're out. But I'm giving the floor to you.
Well, I'm with you, so don't.
No, we'll trust and believe. We're good.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, August 17th. 2021. I am Santita Jackson coming to you from the WCPT studios. Well, actually, the studio's in my home right now. You know, it's COVID. WCPT is the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Please tell people about us and like and share this broadcast. I'm on Facebook Live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And of course, I'm on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Want to hear your voices today? Call me or text me. Thank you, GWC and your lawyers, for that opportunity. Call me or text me. Call me. I want to hear your voices at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. That's WCPT. I want to hear your thoughts about Afghanistan. What happened? Why did Afghanistan fall so quickly? It turns out it's been falling for a while. When we went in there 20 years ago, the Taliban controlled 5% of the country. Now they control more than 50%. There were cities that were falling last week in 9 provinces. Something is going on here. Something is going on, and we're going to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show with John Nichols and at the bottom of the hour, Andrew Coburn of Harper's magazine. Let's get to a few of these headlines so we can get to John Nichols. Chicago will have a high of 80 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 91 degrees, sunny. The Dow closed up 110 points. The Nasdaq closed down 29 points. The S&P 500 closed up 11 points. Well, Major League Baseball, an active day. The Twins, 5, Cleveland, 4. The White Sox, 5, Oakland A's, 2. But the Cubs just keep on stumbling along. My goodness. Cincinnati, 14, Cubs, 5. What happened, everybody? Well, now we're looking at booster shots for our vaccine shots. What do you think about that, everybody? We had Dr. Deborah Holden who said these are not vaccines, everybody. These are shots that help to supplement, that help to augment the shots that we took in the first place, because the efficacy wanes after a few months. That's what we're beginning to see, because as she reminded us in the last half hour, the last hour, we're still in a clinical trial with all of this. The Biden administration is expected to release guidance advising people to get a COVID-19 booster shot 8 months after their first dose, everybody, after their initial dose. That's not for the people who've not had them yet. This is the people who need to go into that second round. The plan, which is still being developed, would be put into action in mid to late September, pending FDA authorization. Pfizer has submitted initial data to the FDA that supports the use of a booster dose and claims such a step would help protect against the virus and, importantly, most importantly, against variants, everybody. Wildfires and droughts are still relentlessly ravaging the western U.S., indeed Lake Mead out west. They are having record low levels of water. They're trying to figure out water restrictions out west. What will all of that mean? In the meantime, in Haiti, they're pleading for help, everybody, as the storm, tropical storm Grace, has made landfall days after this incredible earthquake, 7.2, where at least 1,419 people have been killed and nearly 6,000 people have been displaced. I'm going to put it on my website, on my Facebook page, so that you can know how you can help, because people need all kinds of things. They need money, they need food. Children need diapers. There's a lot that's going on. So let's get right to it, everybody. Let's talk about Afghanistan. Let's talk about Afghanistan. As we bring John Nichols on, I want to bring on, you've been up, you said you just want to get in, you want to speak to John Nichols, but you wanted to get something off your chest. What's on your mind today, Renee?
Good morning, and thanks for taking my call. Back before the war in Iraq started, when we had gone into Afghanistan, I used to coach the drill team at Herzl, Santita, and I wrote this little chant for the kids, and I think it's sort of relevant. It goes like this, if I may. World peace, dun, 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 world peace, dun, 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 world peace, dun, 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 dun. If Dr. King were here today, this is what he would say.
Hey.
We need to take a stand, stop the war in Afghanistan. Now take a step back. Don't send our kids to Iraq. Issue war, don't know what they're fighting for. Taking land and taking oil, killing innocent girls and boys. Give me world peace, we need world peace, so we can live a place for you and me. And so, I'm saying that's why we were there. But I also know that Dick Cheney made a lot of money through Halliburton on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Blackwater, closely associated with the Republicans, made a lot of money with their mercenaries and stuff in these wars. Rich men, they made a lot of money off these wars they knew they couldn't win. If Russia couldn't win a war against them, they knew they couldn't win, but they made a lot of money, and I bet they got some of those mineral rights that you talked about and some of that oil from over there, because we don't go in to help people, we go in to take. And that's sad, but that's the truth from what I've seen in my lifetime. And I just wanted to say that, and thank you.
Look, I love the chant. You need to record that. I love it. I love it. Well,
There's another verse too. I revised it over the years as we were in Iraq, and this is what my students were singing in assemblies, Santita. So I'm glad I had some effect on the people I was around.
Well, Lorraine said, you better tell it, Renee Criswell. And we love it. We love it. We love it. but but these are the things, at some point we need to reach for peace. I mean, peace should not be a dirty word. It shouldn't be. And it should be discussed. If we're going to discuss war, we should discuss peace. And there should be a peace dividend. And that leads us to John Nichols, of course, from The Nation magazine. And John Nichols, I mean, wow, talk about fighting for the soul of the Democratic Party, your latest book. We're fighting for our very souls, it seems. We've been an occupying force for 20 years, and it's like we've been chased out the country. What is your take on what we're seeing here in Afghanistan? And hats off to you, Renee, for that wonderful chant.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to Renee, and thanks to you, Santita, for having me on and for this conversation, because it's an important one. We have to put these things in perspective. And I guess the place to begin is that I am shocked that there are people on television, anchors of news shows and members of Congress, supposed foreign policy experts, all sorts of folks who are running around saying that they're surprised at how things have turned out. Because if you go back 20 years ago to the aftermath of September 11th, the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, when it was clear the United States needed to respond, needed to find the people who were responsible and to make sure that it didn't happen again, there were many, not enough obviously, but many wise voices that said, yes, this is a crime and it needs to be addressed. It is a crime against humanity, and that specific actions need to be taken. But one of the counsels at that time was, be careful not to let this tragedy, this crisis, this crime turn into an excuse for nation building, i.e., to go out and occupy other countries and try to make them into what we might want them to be, right? And the fact is that in the initial stages there were many people, Democrats and Republicans, who said, be careful about this. And yet, this is what happened, and it happened rather quickly. And the Bush-Cheney administration has to be given a huge portion of the responsibility here. They entered into Afghanistan. They took increasing control of Afghanistan. The United States became, with some of its international partners, an increasingly definitional figure in the governing and the policy making, the structures of Afghanistan. And in so doing, they created the facade, the image of progress, better conditions for women, more, better approaches as regards education, all sorts of things happening, things that I think many people in the United States would be very, very pleased with. But it went back to that core concept that this was an attempt by the United States and by its allies to create something that wasn't there. And I think this is the important thing to understand. As time went on, it was clear that the U.S. military forces that were on the ground in Afghanistan, in increasing numbers, under Democratic and Republican presidents, both parties, often with support of both parties in Congress, because Afghanistan became, if you will, the more popular intervention compared to what happened with Iraq.
Head is back on.
So people kept pouring money in, people kept pouring troops in, et cetera, and they kept telling us how successful it was. But if you listen to people from Afghanistan, and if you listen to analysts who really knew the place, what they kept saying was, they were concerned that whether this was really taking, whether all these changes that the United States was trying to impose from outside were really shifting. And, what became clear, and I think it's proven by the experience of the last few days, is that it hadn't taken. That at the end of the day, there was still many of the old challenges, many of the old frustrations And when the United States left, when the decision was made to leave, and remember that decision was made by Donald Trump, not by Joe Biden. Joe Biden is carrying it through. As soon as it was made, then suddenly you saw the reassertion of the Taliban, the folks who had been there in another variation before the U.S. entered in 2001, 2002. And then suddenly everyone's saying, oh, we're shocked that this is happening. Well, they shouldn't be shocked. The fact of the matter is that change in countries generally, and I want, we don't have to say anything is universal, but change in countries generally takes place organically, where it's based on the people themselves. And when someone from outside, when a country from outside tries to force a change, when they try to impose a change, even if it's to the good, it doesn't necessarily take. And so I guess that brings us around to the question of what we were going to do. What were we going to do? Were we going to stay forever? Were we going to keep troops on the ground in Afghanistan forever to try and impose a certain direction for the country, a direction that I think many people in the United States, certainly in our government, wanted? Or were we going to leave? Were we going to acknowledge that, frankly, it hadn't worked? Or if it had worked, then we were going to step away and let it take its natural course. Let those who had been trained, those to whom we had given, trillions of dollars, those for whom we had made all these sacrifices, let them, take up the mantle and carry it forward. But whatever it is, to let Afghanistan be Afghanistan.
But John, hold on. But let me ask you this, because we weren't there trying to liberate women. Women here don't make what men make. Because I'm saying we stomped all over Hillary Clinton, and that was a bipartisan thing. And we've had a bipartisan betrayal. I'll give Trump credit for saying we need to get out, okay? Because all the presidents, Democrats and Republicans, have been in there. And the military-industrial complex has made money hand over fist. And heaven knows I don't want women to be oppressed there. But you know what? What we've been doing there has just been, this was not about, if we don't have the right to impose views on anyone, right? This is not what this is about. These people sitting on trillions of dollars of mineral wealth, right?
Look, what you're saying is a parallel to a lot of my thoughts.
Yeah.
The reason when I scoped this out to try and give the perspective is to, let people make their statements, let presidents and members of Congress make their claims along the way about what the mission was, etc. But the bottom line, Santita, is that it's clear it didn't work, right?
At all.
That this effort to make Afghanistan into something that was satisfactory to the United States, that was satisfactory to many European countries, it's satisfactory to outside forces. It didn't take. And that doesn't mean that there aren't people in Afghanistan who don't want a more liberal democracy, who don't want a fairer society. I think there are. I have no doubt of that. But that the dynamics on the ground did not work. And so now we see this circumstance. And so this gets us to the really complex part of it. Because at the end of an occupation, at the end of a military presence, whatever word you want to use, if you want to use the word mission, whatever phrase they use, at the end of such a thing, when the forces that have been there leave, right, then you actually get the measure. You actually see what the reality is. Well, the measure in Afghanistan is that the Afghani military forces, into which the United States poured, hundreds of billions of dollars, years of training, gave support from, not just our military, but contractors, saw thousands of deaths of Americans. All of that, the Afghan military was not going to fight. They were not. It was in many ways, not exactly, but in many ways, similar to what we've seen in other places. And so in such a result that is unattractive, right? that, in America, everybody's looking at it and saying, whoa, hold it. That's not good. We were there for 20 years. How come nothing came of it? How come, we didn't get what we wanted? Well, at the end of the day, that's the wrong attitude. That's the wrong question, because that then leads us to the next question. Well, if indeed you were here only to get what you wanted, right, to have the result that you wanted, then, the answer to that is you had to stay forever. And it would have been a forever war. It would have been an endless U.S. presence. Now, there are some people who are satisfied with that, who want the U.S., I guess, to take what resources it has and go around the world and set up troops in different countries and make those countries do as the U.S. pleases. But that's not what the American people want. The polling shows the American people were ready to be done with this. And I think it was very hard for Joe Biden. I think this last few days have been jarring. But it is a predictable play out. I think it's one that Biden anticipated. He didn't anticipate the speed, but he certainly anticipated the reality of it. And he's seeing it through. Now, can you see it through in the most humane and most responsible way that gets Americans, the people who work with Americans, out as, to other countries, to the U.S. included? Yes, you can. And it looks like there's reasonable evidence that is possible. Should it be organized better? Yes, I think there's no question that there needs to be a better organized playout. But at the end of the day, the U.S. is leaving Afghanistan, departing as a military force. That is good. It is good that this is done. It is good that the U.S. Has decided to end this presence, this mission, this occupation.
Well, this occupation, and I want to stay right there, because in the meantime, China, they have development projects with Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, Russia, that's what they're doing. They're into infrastructure and building. We were into colonialization and occupation. That's over. And I think, John, if we don't have that lesson, if we don't take that lesson away, that some people that the global South has gotten grown, and they are not just going to allow Western powers, European powers on both sides of the Atlantic to just come in and take their resources and just sit on top of them. I think we're going to take a big here.
I think you're right. And I think, but you realize that is a lesson that doesn't seem to take.
Because we don't tell it, right? I mean, because we continue to say we wanted to make women free. Hey, I'm a woman. I believe women need to be educated. We are the female expressions of God. You and I are both deeply religious people. So I think holding God down, and shame on you. That having been said, I know that's not what this is about. They are sitting on trillions of dollars of minerals. And all we need to do is occupy so we can go on and get it. Like, whoa.
Well, and also the pipeline realities. There's so much, there's so much backstory here as regards the economics and the reality of the military industrial complex. Think of this also, Santita.
Right. And so I'm just saying for us to, I think
contractors
have that discussion, right?
Right. We should. And then there's one other aspect of this, I think, that's important to add to the mix. And that is that, our media does not choose to tell the story. And this is major media, a lot of it, not all of it. Obviously, this show's talking about it. But our media doesn't choose to tell the story in an accurate way. 20 years ago, I remember writing and talking to people, doing interviews where we talked about Afghanistan as the graveyard of empires, right? That the British had tried to impose their will and failed, that the Russians tried and failed horribly. In fact, that played a real role in the downfall of the Soviet Union. And now the United States was going in, trying again, and there's an awful lot of history here. And one of the mistakes we make is try and go against history. Now, why do we try to go against history?
I've got 1 minute.
Go against with all the evidence? I think it's hubris. I think it is the United States believing, well, we somehow can do this where other people didn't. And the evidence was always that that wasn't going to be the case. We did not take seriously what real experts told us was reality. And now we have these same experts on television saying, oh, no, this is, and Biden's making a mistake.
And they need to sit down,
he's
John.
Not making a mistake. He is not making a mistake. He's doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing. And you know what? And Trump did accelerate this. And so I give him credit for that. I'm out of that. Because Democrats and Republicans, the military industrial complex and the corporate industrial complex have been on this. And we've lost American lives. We've lost Afghan people. They have died. They have been killed. They've been occupied. It's just wrong.
And we're arguing in the United States about whether we can fund health care and education and things of that nature here. And we spent $2 trillion on this.
Now, wait a minute.
The fact of the matter is, we've got to come home. It is time to come home.
We got to do something. You know, John generally comes in every Tuesday at 7:30, but he was gracious enough to move things around so we could accommodate your dear friend Andrew Coburn from Harper's Magazine.
Who knows the region well, who knows the region very well.
As do you. So there we go. We love you, John Nichols. Stay right here for more of the Santita Jackson Show. Ted, I'm coming right to you in just a few minutes. Oh, John, this is terrible.
The history of
what the mainstream media have done. They have really.
Chicago's progressed a little bit in the talk here.
They have done. I mean, what they have had. I think what they have done is just this has been criminal.
Horrible.
Oh,
the media coverage is horrible too, because they're saying, oh, well, this is like Vietnam. It's like the end of Vietnam. Well, yeah, to an extent it is, because actions of this end this way, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not pretty, it's not efficient, and now it is ugly and it's sad, and we should do more for our interpreters and people like that. There's no question, but we shouldn't be. I'm offended to some extent by people who say they're surprised.
Oh,
I think, how can you be surprised?
I mean, of course they can be surprised. They're surprised because they've been lied to.
They're surprised because they also didn't choose. I'm not talking about ordinary people. I'm talking about the so-called experts.
Please!
Can't believe it happened so quickly.
You mean the apologists for empire?
Yeah,
I mean, this is
too often. And the number one person in that regard is Liz Cheney.
Of course she is.
Liz Cheney's going on TV, ranting and raving about this. And the one person she doesn't mention is getting it wrong is her father.
Well, and guess what? And no one calls her out on it. Because I tell you what, people try to beat me upside the head about Reverend and anything he's done or something, if he's breathed wrong in their opinions. So, give me a break. Yeah. There's some people they protect. There's some people who they throw under the bus or try to destroy. And the thing is, they're giving her a free pass.
Liz Cheney a platform all over the place.
Yeah.
To say that Biden's making a terrible mistake, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And she will blame Biden. She'll blame Trump. She'll talk about what a bad guy Rand Paul is because he's against all these wars. She blames Democrats and Republicans, but she never mentions Bush and Cheney.
Well, and they
they promised this wasn't going to be nation building, and that's exactly what it turned into, and it didn't work.
Well, this is what we do. I mean, come on, this is empire. And, Gore Vidal said, look, we've had a choice between creating a civilization, building a civilization, or basically creating empire. And he said his disappointment in the United States is that we chose empire over civilization, and empires fall.
The wisdom of this country in the early stages was that they had revolted against an empire for all of their flaws.
Absolutely.
They initially said, we don't want to be that. And we've evolved into, in so many cases, exactly what we said we didn't want to
what
be.
We fought.
And what we have to recognize is you have to lead by example. And we too often fail to lead by example.
Well, you know what? I'm going to let you go. You can say hello to Andrew Coburn. I think we have him quickly.
Oh, if he's here?
He's not here yet. I'm trying to get him on. He's not picking up his phone.
Oh, I gave you two numbers.
I'm going to try his second number.
Okay, try both numbers.
Also, Ted hung up again.
Okay, no, that's okay. It's okay.
He has no patience, I guess.
Honey, it's okay, but get Mr. Coburn up. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
This is an overwhelming, it's a very overwhelming time, and I think a lot of people are going to be overwhelmed. But at the end of the day, when all of this, when everything's out, when it's sorted out, I think people are going to recognize that Biden did the right thing.
Yeah,
because the alternative is that we would be in Afghanistan forever. And at some point, that would become, it would turn bad. It would turn worse than it is.
Andrew Coburn is on the line.
Okay, well, let me let you say hello to Mr. Coburn, and then I'm going to let you go.
Absolutely. Andrew, are you there?
5 seconds.
Yes.
That's John
Andrew,
Nichols.
John Nichols, how are you?
Oh, great. Good to hear you. I'm well.
Oh,
5 seconds.
Glad to hear that. Where are you at? Where are you at right now?
And I'm in Rappahannock County, Virginia.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing for all of the people.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. What a pleasure it is for me to have this gentleman with us today. Indeed, I have admired him greatly for many years, as have you. He's the Washington editor for Harper's Magazine. And he is also the author of this wonderful book, Spoils of War. So it is a wonderful book because it's so informative. Spoils of War, Profit, Power, Profit, the American War Machine, everybody. The American War Machine, and it is a machine. It is a machine. So Andrew Coburn, I'm so glad that you're with us today. Read this wonderful piece from The Spectator, how the U.S. military got rich from Afghanistan. The departure of American troops from Afghanistan is being lamented, is being hailed in some places, of course, as a defeat. But you say this is short-sighted. Please explain.
It is short-sighted because actually the Afghan war was a tremendous success from the point of view of the people who were actually running it, because they made enormous sums of money. I mean, what motivates a lot of people is direct personal reward, and that's what they got. I mean, we've heard. I mean, President Biden said yesterday we spent almost $1 trillion. Actually, when the total bill is added up, it's over twice that. Anyway, $1 trillion. But they don't go on to mention who got the money. And who got the money was defense contractors, military, senior military officers that went on to become consultants. A lot of the money never even left Washington. It was spent right here. So when they say, oh, it was a terrible defeat, and all that, actually, no, hundreds of billions of dollars went poured out the door and poured into the pockets of the people who were responsible for keeping the war going. I mean, that's why it went on so long, is because it was so profitable.
You said that there's almost, you went to Colonel John Boyd. I mean, I really combed this piece because it was so fascinating. So whenever I hear people talk about the profit motive in all of this, I say, aha, I think we need to stay right here, Mr. Coburn, because that's what it is. It's almost as if, as Colonel Boyd pointed out, it almost doesn't matter whether we win or lose. We've got to feed the war machine. That is, we've got to make the money. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, John Boyd, Colonel Boyd, who was, considered one of the great American military thinkers of the last century, he said, people say the Pentagon doesn't have a strategy. It does have a strategy. The strategy is to keep the money flow going. And he was so right. How else can you explain, the way, everyone knew, they knew. I mean, here's the test. They knew that we know from these so-called Afghanistan papers that were kept secret for a long time, which were confidential interviews with senior American generals, from early on in the war, but from over the last 20 years, they all knew privately, they all acknowledged privately that the war was hopeless. You were never going to sort of totally control Afghanistan and, achieve quote-unquote victory. But in public, they all said, oh, no, victory is just around the corner, just one last, push, another few $100 billion, and we're there. And so they knew themselves. They weren't fooled. They didn't fool themselves, but they sure fooled many people back here and in Washington who wanted to be fooled, as I say, to keep, to keep the money flow.
Were they fooled? Because it seems that we've been here before. It seems that we stay here all the time. Andrew Coburn, Washington editor for Harper's Magazine. We're talking about the profit in all of this. Who profited from this? Who won? It certainly was not our military. We've got payday loan centers on the edges of bases. Our enlistees make no money. Their families are struggling. Many of them are trying to get relief, literally, from the government, in addition to their service. Please help me to understand who is making this money. Because like you said, you go to Washington, which is, the Washington, Virginia, Maryland corridor. That is like one of the wealthiest places in the United States, in the world. It's just rich.
Sure.
And it's flush with military money.
Well, yes. The war, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, remember I was talking to a big property developer in Washington. And I was saying, oh, God, the war on terror, what a bust and a waste that's been, And he said, oh, no, look around you. We were sitting in quite a nice restaurant, the gleaming high-rise buildings all around. He said, look at Washington today. He said, the war on terror built this. And made him a lot of money in the process, of course. That's just one aspect. But in that piece you quoted from The Spectator, and in my book, I have many more examples of this. There's a story about just recent, last few months, it was announced we were sending the Afghan military 37 Black Hawk helicopters. They cost about $12 million each, so that was a good chunk of change, about $200 or $300 million. Why were we doing this? Well, the Afghan Air Force actually used to have some quite good Russian helicopters, which were able to get up as high as you need to go in Afghanistan, very mountainous country. But the U.S. was buying them from the Russians and then sending them to the Afghans. The Russian mafia suborned, just one small, a U.S. Army officer, and basically entered into a corrupt contract with him, which was discovered. So that contract went away, and instead we decided to pay the Lockheed Corporation this hundreds of millions of dollars to buy these helicopters, which actually don't work so well in Afghanistan because they can't go as high. And the Afghans, they were too complex for the Afghans to maintain them or fly them. So, that was just several $100 million into the pockets of the Lockheed Corporation. That's one example. I could give you dozens more. The money that went, we were paying for, I think that at one point, a gallon of gas used by American troops in Afghanistan was costing over $100. I think it was more than that, but at least $100. Why? Because every contractor along the line was taking their bite, and so the price went up and up and up. It was just a money pit, the whole thing.
Why is it important for Americans to know this, to understand the profit motive in war?
Because you can't do anything. If you want to change the system or reform the system, you can't do it unless you understand the fundamental causes of why things go wrong. Why did we have, in this case, we're talking about the Afghan war, why did we have, why did this war last so long and people, might have all sorts of reasons. But until you understand it's about the money, you're never going to be able to make a change. And, quite often people, liberals will say, oh, we spend too much on defense and we need money for good things like healthcare and housing and so forth. Well, that's true. But what people also need to understand is that the more money, the way having a bloated defense budget like we do actually gives you less defense. Because if the motivation for our military organization is to make money and not to defend the country, then, you get a bad defense out of it. You lose wars. The effect is bad. I think it's very important for people to understand that. It's of fundamental importance. Otherwise, you go down lots of blind alleys.
How do these defense budgets work? Because it seems that, all jokes aside, that the Pentagon budget is like a black hole. I mean, money just gets dumped into it. They get money from the American taxpayers' coffers that they don't even ask for. We have to fight for $1 trillion for infrastructure, part of which is Wi-Fi for our children, many of whom have had to learn remotely and who still have to do so. We're fighting for $1 trillion, but $2 trillion and counting, at least, have gone into this particular misadventure. What is this Pentagon budget? I mean, how does it work?
Well, that's a great question because the Pentagon doesn't know, literally, because, for years, for 30 years or almost 30 years, there was a law passed by Congress saying the Pentagon should be audited, should audit itself, to figure out where all the money was going. And for a long time, they just didn't do it. And in recent years, they've tried to do it. But, they haven't been able to do a successful audit. I mean, no one knows really where all the money goes. And there's, they'll be given money to do one thing and they'll spend it on something else, but they cook the books so no one knows exactly where that money was spent or who got it. I mean, this is literally the case. And, there's a very, I don't want to sound like I'm anti-military, because I'm not. I mean, I think we should have an effective defense and properly support the people who actually are on the front lines. Do you remember a few years back, I certainly heard a lot of stories from military families whose sons and daughters were, in Iraq or Afghanistan, but they weren't being given proper equipment. Mm-hmm. The families were going into debt to buy, body armor or night vision goggles or, the basic equipment a soldier needs for their sons and daughters, because this vast military machine, which was, happy to spend billions to, some well-connected defense contractor, couldn't be bothered to actually give spend the money on protecting the troops. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, that I thought at that time, I thought it was so incredibly shocking that this should be going on.
Oh, I know someone who did that for her son. And she was an official in the state of Illinois. And she said, this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. I'm having to send my son a Kevlar vest.
Wow.
It was just unbelievable. I mean, and it's the waste. And everybody, I'm worried about people and these PPE loans that they got, because I know a lot of people just unwittingly didn't spend the money exactly the way they do it. And, the little guy, Andrew Coburn, Washington editor for Harper's Magazine, author of Spoils of War, Power, Profit, The American War Machine. We're talking with him right now. Little people, if you will, people are so small they can be crushed. But the military-industrial complex, these big corporations, we don't touch them. We don't audit them. We don't know where the money goes, but we do know that our troops are not paid. They're paid a subsistence wage, Mr. Coburn. We do know that you have payday loan centers on the edges of many bases across the United States, because their families, the checks that they get can't get their families from one payday to the next. And of course, many of them don't have the adequate equipment that they need to stay alive when we send them into these places. What can we do to turn this around? I mean, just, is there anything we can do?
What can we do? Well, there's a lot of things we could do. For a start, acknowledge the problem. I mean, there's also the incremental things that should be done, like at the moment, every senior military officer who retires, or almost everyone, almost without exception, the 3- and 4-star generals go immediately into, and they already get very fat pensions, goes immediately into working for some defense contractor. Anyway, I can give you lots of examples of that. You should stop. That should be stopped. We shouldn't have, because it means that every senior officer, while he's, in his position in the military, is thinking about, what job he's going to get himself or herself when they retire. When they retire, they don't, they retire quite young. So, their priorities are to service, to make themselves appealing to the defense business. So we should put an end to that. It didn't used to happen. This is quite a relatively recent thing.
When did this begin? Well, when did this start?
It's really got going, I would say, I really started to notice it in the 1980s, in the Reagan era. Yeah. It started to take off. And it's just grown and grown and grown since then. There's a great organization called the Project on Government Oversight in Washington. And they, pogo.org, they did a great report a couple of years ago on this thing, the revolving door, the military revolving door, which everyone should look at to see how bad the problem is. What else could be done? We should insist that no weapons should be bought without proper testing. Believe it or not, the military tries to avoid testing new weapons just in case, because in order not to find out that if they don't work, we have to stop buying them. I mean, at the moment, the most expensive weapons program in history is the F-35 fighter plane. They've already spent hundreds of billions of dollars on it, and they want to, even though it has been tested and it fails the tests, but they go on buying it. And the Congress is complicit in this. The Congress, because it's campaign contributions to members of Congress from the company, from Lockheed particularly, and it is jobs for sure. But the result is we've got this, now hundreds and potentially thousands of these effectively almost useless planes, which cost at least $400 million each, are going to be cluttering up our air bases. So that, there is a law actually, but they ignore it, saying you shouldn't buy the thing until you can see if it works or not. That'd be another good start. Overall, though, in answer to your question, Santita, the most important thing is to cut the money. I mean, to say, we can't afford to give you $750 billion, I think they're projecting for next year, because we want the money for something else, something useful, and secondly, because it gives us a bad defense. I mean, we've just, an example of the rot and the political rot that's involved. The Senate Armed Services Committee a couple of weeks ago voted to increase not this next year's budget, but the budget after, because they project, by 5%. We're already spending, more, several times more than any other country in the world, more than the next 8 countries, I think. Even, 2 or 3 times what the Chinese spent, even who are meant to be our big enemies these days. And they want to give it more. It's, there's so many things that need to be done. But the most important thing, I think, is to try and instill some character in the military, to stop this quest for money. That there are many people, officers, men and women, ordinary soldiers and sailors and airmen, who are patriotic and want to defend their country and join to defend their country. But as you go up through the ranks, that it becomes corrupted, and what the objectives become. How can I prepare for a fat retirement? How can I get promoted by looking the other way when a contractor messes up? It needs to be a fundamental shift in the whole culture, I believe.
We're talking with Andrew Coburn, Washington editor for Harper's Magazine, author of Spoils of War, Profit, Power, Profit, Spoils of War, Power, Profit, The American War Machine. Things really do have to change. I mean, Donald Trump reached out to President Jimmy Carter during his presidency, and he said, I've noticed something. China is way ahead of us. What is going on? It seems that we're going back while China is going forward. And President Carter is reported to have replied to him. He said, well, we're at war everywhere, and they're building. They are engaged in infrastructure projects. If you go to Africa, I've been going there for decades, and they have been there for decades, building, just building country after country after country. And it seems that America is wedded to this imperial idea and ideal, and it's not ending well for us, Mr. Coburn, at all.
No, and it's, I'm afraid not. Maybe, President Biden, who I've criticized quite harshly in other areas, I think he did the right thing. He's being, the press today is all attacking him for having, this is a disgrace and we shouldn't have left, and, how outrageous. And he said yesterday, we did the right thing, and I, don't regret it. I think he's right. Mm-hmm. Were we going to stay there forever? They obviously it could have been better organized, the evacuation, but it was always going to be messy. I mean, we created this sort of artificial state. I mean, it wasn't really a government, because it was basically a bunch of thieves and racketeers and drug lords. But it appeared, if you were in Kabul, it looked like something might be approaching, a sort of a real state. But it was completely sustained by us. I mean, this is a government which never, on its own, could never hope to have revenue more than about $2 billion a year. And we were paying $10 billion a year. So, of course, the moment we left, the whole thing was going to collapse. It was inevitable. So, this is a rare example of me supporting President Biden on this.
Yes, it is. But it didn't turn. I think you're right. It was always going to be messy, because the way things start off is the way they end up, Mr. Coburn. It started off messy. Yeah. It's ending up messy, and it's imperial projects never end well. I've got 2 minutes. What do you want us to know before we go?
Well, I want to say, bear in mind what I said earlier about the money. I mean, it's most in my book, in Spoils of War, which will be out in a couple of weeks. I argue that you really can't understand the way politics work, or the way foreign policy or military policy works, until you understand what truly drives the machine. And it is, power and profit, with profit being first. It's a simple point, but I think, and which most people instinctively understand. Most people are smart. They
yes.
And they understand the way things work. And the job of government most of the time is to sort of prevent us, following our own instincts. Don't you think?
When I look at the news, absolutely. But when I think of John F. Kennedy and his ambitions to to achieve peace. When I look at Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, as long as he talked about desegregating America, even voting rights, um, he was threatened, but he lost his life when he came out against the Vietnam War. And I think that we need to be mindful of that.
Absolutely.
My father was on his staff at the time, and he said,
really?
"Oh yes, Reverend Jesse Jackson," and he said, we knew because it took him. He pondered for quite some time before he came out. Show you how vicious this can all be, but maybe it's just me, Mr. Coburn. But Dr. King announced that his opposition to the Vietnam War, April 4th, 1967, just after 6 p.m. at Riverside Church. He was killed on that balcony, April 4th, 1968, just after 6 in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Can't shake
No
that.
coincidence, I always thought.
Can't shake that from my mind. I can't. Everybody, the brilliant Andrew Coburn, you do not want to miss what his thoughts. He's an absolute genius and a man of high principles. The Washington editor for Harper's Magazine, my favorite. Author of the book, Spoils of War, Power, and Profit, The American War Machine. You need to get it, everybody. Thank you for honoring me and my audience by being here with us today. I hope that you will be with us once again.
I hope so too. Thank you very much indeed.
And not just once again. Hope you come by anytime you choose. Anytime you write anything, just let us know. We'd love to have you back.
Okay. I certainly will.
Blessings to you. Andrew Coburn, everybody. What a wonderful show today. And Medea Benjamin, John Nichols, Dr. Deborah Holden, and you. Ted, I'm going to get you on the air tomorrow. I sure am. And Laura, call back tomorrow so we can talk about these variants. Love you, everybody. God bless you. Have a great day.
The back-to-school sales event is going.
Okay,
Are we all clear? Did Mr. Coburn go?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's gone.
Okay, thank you so much for a wonderful show, okay?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Was this it for us? I'm not gonna have you anymore?
No. I should still be here.
Okay.
On Tuesdays.
Okay,
Like,
well,
I'll be talking to Matt about my schedule.
Okay.
But I still plan on doing Tuesdays.
okay, well now, remember what I told you about your college president, okay?
Yeah, no, I remember.
Okay, please do that.
All of our customers.
I will.
Miss Jackson's gonna bug you until you do.
Yeah, no worries, Miss Jackson.
I know you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't need that. Yeah, you do.
Outstanding customer experience.
You
Okay.
okay?
Good.
Yourself now.
All right, thank you, dear. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for a wonderful show.
Of course.
Thank
All right,
you.
Miss Jackson, have a good rest of your day.
You too. Blessings to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless you, everybody. Hope that you had a great day. And thank you for tuning into the show. And everybody, like and share. If you want to hear the podcast, hear it to the show, please go to WCPT820.com/Santita. But if you want to see this all over again, go to Facebook, the Santita Jackson and Friends page, or to my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Like and subscribe. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye.
Publicly identifying those installations. Many Afghans who helped the U.S. during its time in Afghanistan are frantically trying to get out